Dredge v. Burn. One copy of Dredge already in top 8 in the hands of Ross Merriam. Can teammate Tom Ross join him?
Todd Anderson was also playing the deck this weekend, the only one of the Roanoke crew to not make day 2. Otherwise, this deck has looked very impressive on camera every time that we've covered it.
So you said this is a weaker matchup for Dredge. Talk me through it, because Dredge, we've seen them be really fast this weekend.
Yeah, but the thing about Burn is basically always killing you on turn 4. Sometimes turn 3. But if it's not killing you on turn 4, it's because of your interaction or their deck just not functioning to expectancy.
Okay.
Dredge is a very high power deck. It can put a lot of power onto the table as early as turn 2, but it's usually actually ending the game maybe turn 5 at the earliest. So you're just behind by one full fundamental turn with your wins.
Tom Ross on a mulligan here. So it's not so much a complicated matchup. This is just a straight race.
Oh, yeah. Tom Ross is looking for that hand that opens up on Faithless Looting and spinning the wheel and looking for some really good dredges off of Golgari Grave Troll.
Contemplating a scry here. Thomas Watson will be on the plate. If this is as much of a racing matchup as you believe it to be, that's huge.
Yeah, play is massive here.
As you know, Thomas Watson, this is his 3rd trip to the feature match area this tournament on a creature light burn build, playing cards like Bump in the Night instead of the expected Wild Nacatl.
As we move to sideboard games, interestingly, Watson has 2 main deck Skullcrack, 1 sideboard, no Atarka's Command, so he has less play against Knot of the Bone. There's only 1 in Ross's 75.
Well, that could certainly matter. Here comes Goblin Guide. It's going to attack, flipping Prized Amalgam and dropping Tom to 18. Now, you talked about Burn's turn 3 kills. You said they're rare, but they usually start with Goblin Guide.
Yep, this is where they start.
Tom will play Insolent Neonate off a mountain.
That'll gain him a couple life. No reason to untap Goblin Guide. We all know where that one's going.
Back to Thomas Watson, a pair of Grim Lavamancers in his hand. So he's going to size up the board here into the Insolent Neonate. Bloodstained Mire will be sacrificed. Watson getting a basic mountain, just stays at 17.
Watson does have a copy of Eidolon of the Great Revel in hand, so fetching for untapped duels could be too much life loss for the way his hand is shaping up.
All right, that much. There we go, and there is the Eidolon you talked about.
Interestingly, Dredge is not a deck that's known for casting very many spells. So depending on how Tom's hand looks, the Eidolon might be more of a liability for Watson.
It's just a 2/2 for 2.
Yeah.
Insolent Neonate is the draw from Tom Ross. He went down to 16 on that attack. He'll go to 14 from his own lands.
So Ross could have blocked the Goblin Guide and activated the Neonate, but he decided to leave the Neonate around. Perhaps nothing juicy to discard just yet?
Do you think this means he doesn't have a Dredger? If he had a Grave Troll, I would have thought just what you said.
Yeah, presumably no Dredger just yet. Game plan might also be something like using both Neonates to double block one of these 2-power creatures, though that's clearly not the plan now.
Yeah, he swings with the Neonate. We know Tom's hand has both a Prized Amalgam and an Insolent Neonate in it. That much we learned off Goblin Guide. So we go back to Thomas Watson. Turn 3, land 3 is Mountain. It's going to swing in for 4, trigger off Goblin Guide. Faithless Looting on top of Tom Ross's deck. You know, the Eidolon of the Great Revel is doing work here, especially if Tom's going to try to Faithless Loot out of this.
Yeah.
And now we see the plan from Tom. He uses Instant Neonate to discard and draw. He discards Haunted Dead. Isn't he supposed to draw the Faithless Looting? And then pays 2 to discard 2 cards to bring back the Haunted Dead. Off the Neonate. Yeah.
And then Watson was at the ready with a Searing Blaze for the token for the Haunted Dead.
No, hold on, stop the game. That doesn't work this way. Because Neonate is discard and draw. He can't, he already flashed back the Haunted Dead. He can't He passed on that. He can't dredge here. If he already put Haunted Dead on the battlefield, he definitely cannot go back and dredge. All right, we have the match here stopped for a judge call on the moment on that last turn. And I believe it has to do with the sequencing of Insolent Neonate.
Yeah, some interesting stuff happening with the ability to say Insolent Neonate, discard, and then draw a card.
So that's all part of one trigger.
Right.
And so if you sacrifice that and then you put Haunted Dead on the battlefield, that means that trigger's done resolving. So it's out of order. It's a little out of order for Tom.
Yep.
Now, all the information was available, so this is going to be a judge's call on how to resolve the situation.
Right. Presumably, it's just out of order sequencing, play on.
Yeah, there wasn't any additional information, so yeah, the table judge will make a ruling as to whether or not Tom has to draw the Faithless Looting or whether he's allowed to out of order sequence and given a warning for it. Those are the two resolutions we're looking at.
Mm-hmm. So
right now, that one is going to be taken care of. Judge, we're going to bring you back in the booth here. Matthias Hunt and Ryan Overturf. We're covering a lot of win-ins here for the top 8 of the Syracuse Open. 4 players in, and we have up to 6 matches that could send a player to the top 8. So everyone's gonna need a win, and they might need some tiebreaker help on top of that.
Yeah, with the gateway that game is playing out, Tom Ross had some interaction that didn't involve casting a spell in the face of Island on a great level. Idea, get a chump blocker that way with the Spirit token he's bringing in, but Searing Blaze was ready for him. That pre-combat land made that even better. I don't think he's getting out of game 1 alive.
Yeah, so I want to go back to this judge call just to kind of explain what's going on here. There was a play that doesn't exactly work in the rules. If you put a discard and draw trigger, discard to draw, so he discards to draw a card. He discards Haunted Dead. In response, he's flashing it back. So he does have a draw. He still has a draw on the stack.
Right, that's part of the same ability that's in the process of resolving.
Right, so the question is whether or not he had progressed past that window.
Well, he can't not draw the card.
Yeah, so what's going on is not so much, Magic's not in a place where if you ever do something in the wrong sequence, you're locked into it. There are lots of things that if you do in the wrong order, with a judge can give a warning for that. So it's not, you might say, hey, we gotta put Tom Ross down to the letter of the law, make him do it that way. That one's up to the judge. They can actually rearrange them. He would get a warning for out of order sequencing if that's the call that the judge makes.
Yep.
But that you're not necessarily locked into that, and that's where the judge call is going right now.
An interesting thing about that sequencing, Tom did it in the way where he had less information. He resolved the Haunted Dead before the dredge, so he's not taking advantage of anything. He's just sequencing kind of just wrong.
Yeah. So we'll see the exact resolution here when we know it. All right. Okay, so we're going to bring you back into the match. Judge call has been resolved. We have Haunted Dead in play. So yeah, that much is fine. He's holding priority with the draw trigger on the stack. He brings back Haunted Dead. He then dredges off the Stinkweed Imp. We are okay. Things move on, and now we're back to Tom's 3rd turn. So on that attack, he made a Spirit token. The Spirit token chumped.
The Spirit token got Searing Blaze.
Got Searing Blazed. Oh, there we go.
So Tom should have dumped to 11 and then 4 points of damage in combat down to 7 is I believe where we are with life totals.
Yeah, we'll confirm that here. It was a prized amalgam discarded as well, so on end step Tom got a prized amalgam, and you're exactly right. It's 7 for Tom Ross. Thomas Watson takes 2 off his own Eidolon when he plays the Searing Blaze. He's at 12.
With Watson still at 12, there's really no way to set up super relevant blood gas. Tom is facing down a lot of damage depending on what's left over in Watson's hand on the following turn. Neonate's at least able to block, or rather, Prized Amalgam's at least able to block.
And Tom Ross, he's going to go on the attack with Prized Amalgam. Thomas Watson goes down to 9. Watson also played a Grim Lavamancer last turn. So now we see some plays from Tom Ross. He's going to go ahead and make a land drop, get a Bloodghast, and looks like cast another Insolent Neonate. He drops down to 5. Bump in the night from Thomas Watson. Sends Tom Ross down to 2, and then the Grim Lavamancer is going to do it. Burn takes the first game off of Dredge.
Yeah, and winning the die roll definitely matters there. As you can see, Tom Ross was getting to the point where he could have multiple blood gas, got Watson below 9. That's kind of the danger zone. He does have access to Conflagrate to do a lot of damage from that kind of position, though Watson able to really seize the initiative in that game.
So game 1 goes over to Burn. Just a little too fast there. All right, let's look at the sideboard. So on Tom Ross's side, you mentioned that they do have some stuff for this matchup.
Yeah, some stuff, though, generally you see 2 or 3 copies of Knot of the Bone. Breaking down Tom Ross's sideboard, 4 Leyline of the Void, 3 Ancient Grudge, 3 Abrupt Decay, 2 Memory's Journey, 1 Collective Brutality, 1 Dark Blast, 1 Knot of the Bone. So it's just the 1 Gnaw, that's for sure coming in. I do like Collective Brutality. It's going to kill one of the creatures from the Burn player. Also, discard a card, maybe get a Dredger out of your hand to gain some life with that. And also in the Burn matchup, you're usually going to be able to hit an instant or sorcery from their hand. So this is really the matchup where Collective Brutality generally shines the most. Tom can also bring in some Abrupt Decays, or a lot better on the play. On the draw, you're just not really where you want to be. It's too tempo negative. You're already taking the hits from the creatures that are really going to matter. So that one's much less good, but at least for game 2, I can see the Abrupt Decays.
All right, over on Thomas Watson's side, 1 Rending Volley, 3 Ensnaring Bridge, 2 Path to Exile, 2 Stony Silence, a Dragon's Claw, this one I know he wants, a Grafdigger's Cage, 1 Skullcrack, 2 Core Firewalker, and 2 Wear Tear.
Yeah, for sure the Grafdigger's Cage. There's some argument for Path to Exile because Tom has got a lot of sticky threats that are coming in, though I think that he just needs to stay on target. The Cage is enough of a haymaker that, sure, bring it in. Everything else, just go upstairs.
What about something like Ensnaring Bridge or maybe even Core Firewalker? Tom's a lot of red cards. If you stick a bridge, I don't know that Tom can cross it.
Yeah, but Tom may have already done the damage. It's also difficult to get to 0 cards. In particular with Burn, before you get down so a Bloodghast or an Insolent Neonate can't attack, your opponent should just be dead from the spells you're casting.
All right. Well, Tom Ross down a game, trying to get into the top 8 here.
Oh, I like Watson's 3rd Skullcrack coming in as well. He's anticipating Knot of the Bone if he knows this matchup.
StarsGames.com. You too can look. We have our t-shirt sale that we run all the time. You too can look just like Tom Ross over in the feature match, featuring your StarCityGames.com t-shirt. The 50/50 cotton poly blend made in the U.S. They are available for order at StarCityGames.com/apparel. Tom Ross going to 6.
Mustache sold separately.
You have to place that one on long order, you know. But for Tom Ross, the 2-time Invitational Championship from Roanoke, Virginia, originally from the Louisiana area, needs no real introduction. 13 open top 8s, and here's the impressive part. Look at the ratios on these. 4 wins out of 13 top 8s. 2 wins out of 3 invitational top 8s. This is really where he shines. When it comes to must-win matches, Tom wins them.
Yeah. We saw earlier in the day Tom Ross winning against Leyline of the Void on 0. He's very good at navigating difficult games and handling high-pressure situations. Not surprising to see that high conversion rate given his temperament.
Turn 1, Faithless Looting from Tom. He scried to the top. See Conflagrate in hand. He's going to discard a Stinkweed Imp. He's got a bridge from below in his hand. He's actually not sure if he wants to discard it yet.
Yeah, he has some options. There's Conflagrate. You know, a lot of this deck just wants to be in the graveyard.
Yeah, it looks like he's Life from the Loams there too. So he'll discard Stinkweed Imp and Conflagrate.
And there's a risk if you put the bridge in too early where you can just end up losing it without really gaining anything. Not to mention that sometimes you'll just want to be casting a very early Conflagrate in this matchup if Watson has a creature-heavy draw.
Sacred Foundry fetched 4 from Watson. He'll go to 17. The usual burn suspects in hand. He's going to start on, looks like Grim Lavamancer. Oh yeah, Boros Charm, Rift Bolt, Lava Spike, all in his hand.
Grim Lavamancer is really funny when you put it heads up against Bridge from Below. It's a 1-card answer.
A Dredge from Tom Ross gets him a lot of goods. 2 Narcomoebas are dredged off the Stinkweed Imp, as well as a Bloodghast in the graveyard.
Yep, that's solid. Putting enough bodies on the table to present more threats than the Lavamancer is capable of dealing with.
Remember, Tom Ross is on a 2 Greater Gargadon build. It means if he gets that bridge from below in his graveyard, Greater Gargadon can start really making an engine.
Yeah.
So he'll play and fetch with a fetch land. Bloodghast comes out of the graveyard. Tom down to 19. And here is Life from the Loam, bringing back 3 lands. Pretty good turn for Tom Ross.
With a Conflagrate in the graveyard, I'll take that.
And we go back to Thomas Watson. Turn 2, he's drawn a Skullcrack. And you're saying he might need that in this matchup.
Yes. Again, Tom only has the 1 Knot of the Bone, though that card is great at stopping Gnaw from mattering.
Yeah, 1 in the sideboard, none in the main. I like this approach from Tom. So the 2 bad matchups you were talking about from Dredge is it's bad against Leyline of the Void, I guess, and it's not good against Burn. And rather than trying to fix its bad matchups, Tom has built a sideboard just to beat up his good matchups, which I'm actually a huge fan of.
Yeah. Don't try to be something you're not. If they're getting better in the matchups that you're good against and you're not, maybe they're turning that around, you have to play 2 sideboard games, just solidify those matchups.
Thomas Watson takes 2 off a fetch land, and he's Searing Blazes away one of the 2 Narcomoebas. Tom Ross to 16. He will Dredge Life from the Loam. Insolent Neonate and Golgari Grave Troll put into the graveyard. Keep in mind that Conflagrate is in the yard. Tom's going to flashback Faithless Looting, though. Now some big mill coming. Here's Golgari Grave Troll drawn. 6 cards into the graveyard. Among them, a Bridge from Below, a Bloodghast, and a Narcomoeba. That's a great 6.
Yes.
And then he actually just draws for his other card. No more Dredgers. But Narcomoeba's into play. Tom has already made a land drop this turn, so Bloodghast won't join just yet.
This game's looking solid for Tom.
Now he discards 2. He discards a 2nd Bridge and a Golgari Grave Troll, swings for 3. Thomas Watson down to 12. With 2 bridges in their yard, he's not killing anything.
Yeah.
That's
if he's killing anything, it's going to be his own creatures. We might see Tom actually just Conflagrate down his own team.
What about this? Thomas Watson, a lot of burn in his hand, but he actually doesn't have the 3rd land. So the question is if he can cast all this fast enough. Is he even suspending 2 Rift Bolts? It's this mana choke. I mean, Grim Lavamancer.
Yeah, he's going to end up missing out on Lavamancer activations just because he doesn't have the mana.
Yeah, plays both Rift Bolts. 6 damage for 2 mana. That's a great conversion. We'll go back to Tom Ross. He dredges 6 more, gets another Bloodghast and a Stinkweed Imp.
And if you imagine that Watson has a 3rd land, a Lavamancer activation would put Tom to 14, 2 Rift Bolts down to 8, Lavamancer 2 more spells could close it.
I believe, wait, if Tom Ross Conflagrates, burns off a bunch of things. Yeah, I think he's got lethal here. Watch this. Discards his whole hand to Conflagrate. 1, yep, this is exactly it. 1 to the blocker, and then a rest of Thomas's face, plays a land. Now the Bloodghast in the graveyard has haste, swings in, and we're on to game 3.
Well, 3rd land not really an issue.
I suppose when he makes that line, he does lose all his Bridge from Belows for killing the Lavamancer, but
rats. Can't have everything.
Didn't need him anyway. Impressive showing from Dredge. No Knot of the Bone there either.
Yeah, the games you're winning to really come down to having a damage rates there. Milling a lot of Bloodghast certainly works in the Dredge deck's favor. And the early Narcomoebas also accounted for some damage as well.
So these players, we mentioned before, Tom Ross and Thomas Watson about to enter a deciding game 3. Winner of this should be looking good to make it into top 8. Now, if for those of you watching us over on Twitch, you may have your fan here. I know there's a lot of Tom Ross fans watching. So make sure you head over to the feature match with our subscriber-only program. You get to be part of the chat all day. Also, you get to decide the quarterfinals. Tom wins, and you want to see him in top 8, you're going to have to put in that vote. Custom emoticons and everything also given away, only $4.99 a month. If you're watching over on the StarCityGames.com main page, you do have to head on over to Twitch TV/SCG Live to subscribe.
Yep, it's going to be a pretty interesting top 8. Some cool decks, some great players.
Ross Merriam and Chris Anderson already there. 1 and 2 seeds.
I want to watch all of it.
For Tom Ross, he is currently competing for the Player of the Year slot. You see, in 2nd place, He's a ways behind Jeff Hoagland. Jeff did not day 2 today, but he's currently 6-0 in the Standard Classic. So
Jeez.
Tom could really use a top 8 or a win here to make this more competitive. Jeff is going to be hard to catch. But at the end of the season, there are at-large spots for the Players' Championship available. I'm sure Tom would love one of those, though he may get it as early as next weekend when we look at the Season 2 standings. This is going into our Invitational next weekend. The top 3 players at the end of the Invitational, they will qualify. And right now, Tom Ross in 2nd place with a top 8. He'll move to the top of the standings.
And Tom Ross, one of the winningest players on the SCG Invitational stage. 2 trophies for Tom Ross, a 3rd top 8 on top of that. The only player other than Jerry Thompson to win 2 Invitationals.
Keep in mind, Kevin Jones, Andrew Jessup, and Andrew Main and Devin Kepke all day 2 today, so they're going to have extra points added to their total here. But Todd Stevens missing. He's also playing Classics today. This is going to be an interesting race next weekend.
Yes.
Both players getting ready for Game 3. Thomas Watson will be back on the play.
And on the play, you gotta like Burn here. A big part of that game too. Obviously, Thomas missing on the 3rd land is an issue. Choked kind of the way his hand shaped up. Though being on the play made it a non-factor. Tom won before things were sort of mathematically possible for that draw to come together.
Yeah, last game, it's not that Thomas Watson's hand, well, I guess I'll say it wasn't particularly bad. The Grim Lavamancer didn't do much that game because the choke was mana.
It's way worse than Swiftspear or Goblin Guide no matter what in this matchup. In that game, though, not being able to activate it hurt it a lot.
Andrew Boswell, a winner over in the feature match area. With Jund, that will bring him to 12-3. He has very strong tiebreakers. It would be hard for him to miss from here.
Yeah.
But not impossible.
Great tournament for Boswell. We've talked about he's been putting up very consistent results. You know, not top 8 finishes out of the late. If you can get a top 8 this weekend, that'd be huge for him. On the newly minted card hoarder team.
2nd mulligan for Tom Ross. If the mulligan lines up, does this matter? We talk about Dredge and Legacy so much as a deck that can not draw you on 5 cards.
Yeah, so the cards that flip off the top of your deck dramatically impact the way that Dredge plays, but it's not necessarily the 6 cards in his opening hand. It's the 6 cards he finds with Golgari Drave Troll. Some of his very good-looking 7s can turn into nothing. Some of his 5s can turn into explosive starts. It's all about how the deck dredges. Any hand with a turn 1 Faithless Looting can just snowball out of control.
And he's kept on 5. So turn 1, it is a Shockland into Monastery Swiftspear from Thomas Watson. Ross down to 19. We go back here. He's got lands, dredgers, and Faithless Looting. He's going to have some game.
Yeah. Looks to be a good hand. Just needs the deck to cooperate from here.
Had to decide just what he wanted to do with his mana, and he's going to go ahead and fetch with Bloodstained Mire. Goes to 18. We'll see if it's down to 16. It is for Blood Crypt. That's a big cost to pay in this matchup.
Something he was thinking about, he does have a Copperline Gorge in hand. Though getting a fetch thrown out of the deck when you're flipping over as many cards as Tom, it increases the odds that his dredges are better as the game progresses. You know, he had the red mana anyway.
Yeah, there's got to be more to it than that.
It also is another thing you get back with Life from the Loam. It makes that better.
I do like that. So, draw 2, discard 2 from Tom. Yeah, it looks... We'll see just what he has here. There's a black card in his hand. Yeah, he'll discard Golgari Grave Troll and Narcomoeba. And I think it might be that he has a copy of Collective Brutality in his hand that he wanted to make sure he could cast.
Doesn't want to accidentally flip over his Blood Crypts out of his deck.
Exactly. Back to Thomas Watson, turn 2. Blood Crypt from Thomas Watson. Down to 15.
Paying 2 life for the lands from Watson matters a lot less than Ross in this matchup, particularly when he's on the play.
And he's going for it. Boros Charm to put Tom to 12, and an attack makes it 10. He'll pass. We talked about how Burn is such a strong bet to win on turn 4. You feel like with this start, Watson will have a turn 4 if he will have a turn 4 kill if Tom Ross doesn't stop him.
Not having a turn 4 would be very surprising here.
6 cards dredged for Tom Ross. He hit a prized amalgam. He hit a Life from the Loam, a Golgari Grave Troll, a Stinkweed Imp, so all the dredgers he could hope for. But no Gnaw to the Bone just yet.
And there's a couple of combinations that Tom has to do something to stop Watson from having a turn 3.
He's going to play a land, get a Bloodghast back from the graveyard. So you see him rearrange. That prized amalgam's going to wait to come out. Now, if he has Collective Brutality, it would be really strong, right? He could kill the Swift Spear.
Drain some life, get a spell out of the hand.
Yes, and that's exactly what's going to happen. So he discards 2 cards to fully escalate Collective Brutality. So here are the modes. Monastery Swift Spear gets +2/-2 until end of turn. Thomas Watson's going to lose 2 life, and Ross will gain 2 life, and Tom Ross gets to look at Watson's hand and take an instant or sorcery out of it. This is a huge turn for Tom Ross.
Yeah.
All 3 modes are excellent.
And looking at Watson's hand, it is not very good.
Well, Searing Blaze, Lava Spike, and Snaring Bridge appears to be Thomas Watson's hand. The bridges have come out of the sideboard, but I don't know. I mean, Tom Ross can always just go get a big Conflagrate, right?
Yeah, exactly. With that bridge plan, there is some pressure on. He does have enough burn to deal half of Ross's life total right now, assuming he gets a landfall for the Searing Blaze.
We Watson drew. It was Boros Charm, though. No landfall.
Well, that's not a bad draw anyway.
He'll pass. We go back to Tom Ross. So how many turns away are we? 12 life.
Well, Watson might be under the gun of a two-turn clock from Tom.
No doubt. Here's another Dredge of 6. Greater Gargon, 2 more Stinkweed Imps, but most importantly, Conflagrate enters the graveyard. This definitely feels like a 2-turn clock.
Yes.
Here come the creatures. Seeing both. Watson down to 8. I guess Tom Ross, because of that mulligan, only has 2 cards in his hand.
Well, he has 2 cards, but if he just attacks with these creatures, attacks again, that puts his opponent down to 3, and then Conflagrate after his draw step would be for 3.
He's going to Faithless Looting here, which does mean he won't have the cards you were looking for, but it could be something much bigger. He's going to dredge a Grave Troll. He dredges 2 prized amalgams. Second draw. He doesn't have a way to get those amalgams just yet. Here's Stinkweed Imp. Can he find a Narcomoeba? That would be a huge play. Bloodghast. And the 5th one's Narcomoeba. And that will bring back both prized amalgams.
Now he's got way more than lethal on the following
Yeah,
turn.
discards 2 Grave Trolls. Creatures come back. All right, Thomas Watson, it's up to you. Can you deal enough damage here? Boros Charm puts Tom Ross down to 8. Watson will need the...
peels basic Mountain. He can bridge, play Mountain, play a Snaring Bridge, and he's down to 2 cards.
Okay.
So that would buy him some time.
He needs to draw land. He draws, and that face does not look like a player who just hit the land drop.
Look like a bump in the night. I think that Dredge is the thing that goes bump in the night.
He has a Lava Spike and a Bump in the Night. He can get Tom to 2, but that 2 life gain off Collective Brutality, the deal 2, you gain 2, and your opponent loses 2, looks to be the difference maker in this match.
That card broke this game wide open.
Thomas Watson, no choice but to pass the turn. He can't make an Ensnaring Bridge. He's facing down 12 power from Tom Ross, and that might just be the game. Tom Ross dredging Dakmor Salvage for the turn. He's going to play the salvage. 2 Bloodghasts out of the graveyard, and here comes the team. And Tom Ross is going to dredge his way into the top 8, winning in 3 over Thomas Watson's burn deck.
That Collective Brutality, huh?